Welcome to the show. It's time to dive in. Talking sports with Evan. Let the fun begin. From the Brewers to the Packers, we cover it all. Wisconsin pride, we stand tall. The baggers on the field making history. With every touchdown, it's a victory. From Camp Randall to the court, we chill out. Wisconsin sports, we make our state proud. Feel the energy, the passion in the air. Join the conversation, we got stories to share. From the Bucks' big wins to the Brewers' great plays, we'll keep you entertained through all the games. Talking sports with Evan, it's where we belong. Wisconsin's heart, it beats strong.
Good evening, happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Talking Sports with Evan. I'm Evan Watalis, here to bring you this episode of Talking Sports with Evan, and thank you so much for tuning in, watching, viewing, listening, and watching the videos that I've been posting on my YouTube and my Facebook. I greatly do appreciate it. You can find Talking Sports with Evan on X at Evan with Sports, on YouTube and Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan. You can also follow all those pages and check out the shorts and reels and whatever the other short form videos are called across those platforms. You can also find me on TikTok as well at Evan with Sports. Same with my Instagram. Find me on any of those platforms and interact with me. And you can also listen to every past edition of Talking Sports with Evan on Spotify or on Apple. And the QR code in the corner is going to take you to my Spotify page. Make sure to like, subscribe, and rate. I would greatly appreciate all of the above. Friday edition, rare Friday edition, but hey, I'm going to be home tonight anyways because I'm going to be up at 3:30 in the morning on Saturday or 4 o'clock-ish in between that time on Saturday to go to work. So figure kick the can down the road till Friday, give me a chance to get a lot to discuss and talk about. So main things to talk about today is on the Packers front, the assistant coaches and the coordinators finally spoke. Shocking. I know. They finally spoke. Clap there because I know that was commented quite a bit on the media front that we're not hearing from the coaches. We're not hearing from the assistants. We're not hearing from Goody really at all. And obviously the draft, Goody did speak. But now the coaches finally spoke and going to give some general thoughts there. I'm going to talk about the Packers kicking move. They released Brandon McManus, which pretty much assures you that the rookie Smack will be their kicker. Trey Smack will get all the opportunities to be their number one kicker this year. And that's some other Packer thoughts that I've seen thrown around as well. Milwaukee Bucks made it official. Jenkins, the official head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, and going to kind of talk a little bit about some thoughts on that press conference and some thoughts that I'm hearing thus far in regards to Jenkins, and kind of just going to go from there. And if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to comment on, if you're watching this live, feel free to leave a comment. You can comment on the stream, your thoughts, your opinions, whatever you want to share, and I will gladly share it on air with you all. But I'm going to start with the Green Bay Packers and the McManus decision. The Packers releasing Brandon McManus after drafting kicker Trey Smack with their last pick in this most recent draft, a 6th-round pick. And here's my take on it. Unless McManus asked for his release, unless McManus went to the front office and said, hey, look, the writing's on the wall. You're not drafting a kicker you're not drafting a kicker if it's going to be my job. So I would like you to release me to give me an opportunity to go somewhere before training camp and try to find a home that way. Unless McManus did that, to me, there's really no reason to release him right now. You gave him his roster bonus that he was due in March. It was only about $1.5 million. And I know it's easy for me to say $1.5 million. It's not my money, but you gave him that roster bonus anyways. And now on May 8th, you release him with really no reason to release him at all. I guess you want Smack to have all the reps so he can really show that he can't handle the job. But we've seen what happened before when the Packers decided to draft a kicker and not really have any competition for him. And we saw what happened in Andres Carlson stinking up the joint and costing the Packers in the NFC divisional round by missing a field goal that would have made it a tied game instead of a 3-point game late in that game. Then we saw what happened with the kicker from Tennessee, whose name escapes me at the moment. They brought him in the following year after Carlson was not good and eventually signed Brandon McManus. McManus had a good year the year that he came to Green Bay. Great. But he kind of had an up and down year last year, and part of it was injuries, and part of it was consistency. And he didn't do well enough to keep the job. But I just worry that I know Smack was a very good college kicker, but going from college to pro can be very difficult, and that's what they're going to be asking Smack to do and not really having any competition for him. So if he shows up in training camp and stinks up the joint, the Packers are going to once again have kicking issues. And who would have thought? The Packers move on from a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. They move away from a Packer Hall of Famer in Mason Crosby pretty much at the same time. And they've had an easier time replacing the Hall of Fame quarterback rather than the Packer Hall of Fame kicker. But I hope the Smack move works. I hope it doesn't end up backfiring. We've seen it happen way too many times as Packer fans that moves that like this end up backfiring. And as I said, I hope the move itself doesn't end up backfiring with the Packers and Smack ends up being a Ryan Longwell, Mason Crosby type kicker that's going to be kicking for Green Bay for quite some time. That's what I hope. But I hope they don't end up biting the Packers on the you-know-what. Packers coordinators spoke, and I don't really know what people were expecting. Gannon was fine. People are talking about how he was boring, how whatever, but Gannon was fine. He's not his predecessor. He is his own personality. He's very even keel, and Gannon is going to be fine. And I don't understand what people were expecting when he came to the podium to finally talk. First thing I saw the people aren't a big fan of is when he's talking about how he doesn't have a system. He doesn't really have one system. The system is dependent on the personnel. And that's actually smart coaching. Because you saw in the late Dom Capers years that they weren't drafting guys that fit Dom Capers' system, and Dom Capers wasn't adjusting the system to fit the guys that he had, and ultimately he was trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and it just didn't work. Gannon is going to adjust and run the defense based off the personnel that they have. He's not going to be a specific 3-4 base. He's not going to be a specific 4-3 base. And at the end of the day, the NFL most of the time is playing nickel. And it's not just a Packer thing. League-wide, most of the time, you're running nickel packages. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what your base system is because you're not going to be in it the majority of the time. So I don't understand people's frustration with his commenting about he doesn't really have a system. I don't understand people not happy with or questioning just how dry he was. He was fine. And his assistants, they're the raw guys. Babbitt, who has Wisconsin ties. His dad was a Badger O-line coach. He's the raw guy. Gannon doesn't have to be that guy. And it looks like Gannon will be calling the defense from the field. I don't really have a preference one way or the other where guys call the games from. I know some people are adamantly opposed to play callers calling plays from the box. And I know some people that prefer them calling them from the box. But I don't really have a preference either way. But we'll see if it's any different than Hafley. We've seen Mike Pettin, we've seen Joe Barry call plays from the sidelines, and we've seen Dom Capers and we've seen Jeff Hafley call plays from the box. It ultimately comes down to preference, and I don't think it really matters where Gannon is in regards to calling the plays. I am curious on the OC, his comments about open competition and basically gave the job to Jordan Morgan. You're kind of talking on both sides of your mouth there. But I do think it is Morgan's job to lose, and it should be Morgan's job to lose, and he should be giving him every opportunity to keep that job. And then I was reading The Athletic today, and Matt Schneiden does a great job covering the Packers with The Athletic, and he does a mailbag every now and then. It's actually, I love reading the mailbag. And then he answers the questions. And somebody brought up Marshawn Lloyd in the number 2 tailback position for Green Bay. And unfortunately, it looks like the Packers are depending on Marshawn Lloyd to finally be healthy. They need a number 2 back. Josh Jacobs needs a number 2 back. He needs another tailback to take some pressure off of him. He had a injury-plagued year this past year, wasn't 100%. Emmanuel Wilson's gone, and you have Chris Brooks, who is literally just a number 3 back. He's not a number 2 guy. He's a good and pass pro, and he's good at catching the ball out of the backfield, but he's not a number 2 running back. So the Packers are putting all their eggs in the Marshawn Lloyd basket and hoping that he can finally, after 2 seasons, finally stay healthy. And that worries me a little bit because he hasn't shown that he can stay healthy yet. And the running backs coach talks about how there's things he can do that none of the other running backs on the team can do. Well, that's great that there's things that he can do that other tailbacks on the team cannot do, but we would like to see him do it at some point. We'd like to see him not get hurt after getting hit one time, and would like to see him on the field and doing those things that, quote, no other tailbacks on the team can do. And I liked Lloyd coming out of college. He was a good athlete, good catching the ball out of the backfield, explosive, good runner. But best ability is availability, and Lloyd has not shown that he can be available when the Packers need him to be available. And I'm just going to leave that there. Going to move on to the Milwaukee Brewers, and CC Sabathia has his name put into the Brewers Wall of Honor today. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame this past summer, and he got his name put in the Wall of Fame today for the Brewers. And for a guy who was only here for a few months, he got here right before the All-Star break in 2008 in July, August, September, and then like a week in October. He really meant a lot to Milwaukee. And Milwaukee really meant a lot to him. And it's unfortunate that he was truly just a rento. But at the end of the day, the Brewers don't make the playoffs in 2008 without CC Sabathia. You go back to 2007, the Brewers are fighting for first place in the division. They are competing with the Cubs, and it's looking like they're going to clinch the playoffs for the first time in a very long time. And then they collapsed. they completely collapsed and they were out of the playoffs altogether. 2008, they want to avoid that. They trade for Sabathia, and yes, it looked like they were going to have their issues making the playoffs again, and then they let go of the manager in Ned Yost and had interim manager the last week of the year. But without CC Sabathia, the Brewers aren't going to the playoffs. And yes, I get he left for more money in New York, bigger spotlight, better chance to win the championship. But I don't think we're sitting here with the Milwaukee Brewers the way they are right now if we don't trade for CC Sabathia in July of 2008. Mark Attanasio talked about how that trade changed the culture of the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, we had to sit through 09 and 2010 before we had a 2011 season where we took it to game 6 of the NLCS before the Cardinals unfortunately sent us home. Then we had to wait till the 2018 season. But the Brewers have been competitive. They've been fighting around 500, finishing above 500 more often than not. And this has been a special era of Milwaukee Brewer baseball. And it would be nice to get a championship ring out of it at some point. But with the economics of baseball and the way baseball is for your markets like Milwaukee, you're going to have to really hope and pray that you get hot at the right time. You get hot at the right time, and you get luck running your way. The magic carpet ride, and I was hoping that was going to be last year where they got to the NLCS, but they just didn't have enough. Speaking of Brewers, Jackson Cheerio's back. Andrew Vaughn is back, and the Brewers' offense has looked a lot more productive. I know they didn't score a lot of runs this past Monday against the Cardinals in that loss, but Cheerio got on base every single time. And then Wednesday, the Brewers' bats came alive in a 6-2 victory over the Cardinals to split that series, as Tuesday was a rainout. And everything I talked about in last week's show, when those two guys come back to the lineup, it's going to spread things out and balance things out a little bit better. So tonight, you had Jackson Cheerio leading off. You had Bryce Terang batting second, Contreras batting third, Sanchez fourth, Vaughn fifth. Now, Rengifo, fortunately, he has to play third base at the moment. Then you had Lockridge, now Mitchell, Frelick, and Ortiz. So the bottom of the order still, Frelick's starting to come alive a little bit. His average is up to 223, and just a couple weeks ago it was in the 180s, 190. So Frelick's starting to really kick up a little bit, which is great to see. But the bottom of the lineup's still not great. But hey, good news today. During the media availability prior to the game, Pat Murphy hinted that Christian Yelich is closer to being ready than probably people realize. It could be much sooner rather than later. And Murphy hinted that it could even be this series that he gets activated. And if Christian Yelich can come back playing as well as he's done up to this point this year before getting hurt, that just makes the Brewers offense even more dangerous, because now you're going to have Yelich batting third or fourth, then Contreras, and it just makes that lineup even more deep. And unfortunately, shortstop is a big issue offensively. Third base is an issue offensively, but you might be able to hide those spots a little bit better with Yelich coming back along with Vaughn and Jackson Cheerio all in the lineup. You can hide those, Rengifos and those Ortiz a little bit better. It would be nice to see Garrett Mitchell get out of his funk and start turning it around. Didn't start the game, but had to come in for Lockridge, who had a very scary-looking injury tonight, which hopefully it's nothing that serious for him, but it did look like it's going to be serious. So, speaking of Brewers tonight, they're currently up in the top of the 7th, 5-0 over the Yankees. And another really good start from Jacob Mizorowski. Went 6 innings, gave up 2 hits, struck out 11, and walked 2 in a game where he ended up throwing 95 pitches. And I know you would eventually like to see them, push that pitch count a little bit more. But I think on May 8th, it's perfectly fine pulling them out of after the 6th inning and letting the bullpen handle the rest of the game where they're going to be refreshed. And I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because I just said the other day on X, that I wish they would have left Sproat in the game for just one more inning. As you're up 5-0, you can keep him in the game a little bit longer, and you can pull him out if there's any problems. I think tonight, perfect for Mizorowski. Got him through 6 solid innings, shutting the Yankees offense down. And now, as I said, hope the bullpen holds it together. Now, Woodruff, he looks like he might be back sooner than later after having a cyst drained in his shoulder. I felt really bad watching him try to throw the other day. Fastball topping out at 85. That was not good. And his fastball has lost velocity already with the, as he used to throw upper 90s, 96, 97, 98. Now he's lucky to hit 95 once in a game when he used to hit 95 to 97 pretty consistently. So hopefully that corrects itself and he can be that veteran presence that the Brewers could use in their in their rotation. And then Quinn Priester, not sure when we're going to see him. He had a bit of a setback during his rehab starts, and they put him back on the IL. His velocity and his command just isn't there yet. And it's very concerning when you're having a nerve issue in your wrist and the command still isn't there. The velocity still not quite there. So I don't know when we'll end up seeing Quinn Priester anytime soon. And going to end the show talking some Milwaukee Bucks. And Taylor Jenkins officially named as coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. I almost said manager. But I'm very excited for this hire. I talked last week a little bit about what Jenkins being the coach of the Bucks is going to mean, and I think it means that Giannis is going to stay. And there's 2 reasons for that. Why does Jenkins, when there's going to be other jobs opening up that would be better than Milwaukee, why does he take the Milwaukee job if it's a foregone conclusion that Giannis is gone? And if you're the Bucks, why do you hire Jenkins if you think Giannis is going to be gone? Now, the one thing that stood out to me with this press conference yesterday is Haslam. Haslam needs to not talk. Haslam needs to just keep the mouth shut and let John Horst and Edens and now Jenkins be the spokesperson for the franchise. There's no reason to let Haslam talk anymore. He did not have to comment about we're going to know by the draft if we're going to have Giannis stay or if we're going to offer him the Supermax or not. Like, that was stupid. Of course you say at that press conference you have every intention of offering Giannis the Supermax, his contract extension that he's eligible to sign in October. You state yesterday that you have every intention to make him that offer and keep him in Milwaukee. You didn't have to make the comment that you would have that figured out by the draft. It did not need to be said. You did not need to answer the question that way. It was a very dumb response from Jimmy Haslam, and I wish he would have just kept his mouth shut. It's just not what we need right now. Like, every comment coming from his mouth, from Horst's mouth, from Jenkins' mouth right now should be that Giannis is a Milwaukee Buck. We have every intention of keeping Giannis a Milwaukee Buck for the rest of his career, and we are planning on we will be offering him an extension as soon as he's eligible to sign. Because there's a couple things. When you make the comment, this is going to be resolved by the NBA draft, you potentially piss Giannis off. They're not committed to me. The other thing you do, you lower your value on what you might get in return. You're basically announcing to the league that we want to trade him. And you're going to lower your return. You're going to make John Horst, who I don't think should be the GM right now anyway, but you're going to make John Horst's job that much more difficult because you gave it a deadline. We want to have this resolved by the draft. You did not need to give it a deadline. Yes, we know like that's where you want to do it. You want to do it before the draft so you know what draft picks you're going to have. Lottery is Sunday, and you would want to do it sometime after the draft lottery when everyone's draft position this year is locked in, but you didn't have to say it. So Haslam can just stop talking. Use your wallet. We appreciate having your wallet. We don't need your mouth. And then with Taylor Jenkins, he talked to, I really liked what he talked about at the press conference. He's a hard-nosed defender. He gets after the offensive glass, things that the Bucks have not done in the longest time, and definitely did not do with Doc Rivers as their coach. Is Mr. Outdated coaching in Doc Rivers. And then he's talking about how he has a good relationship with Giannis, great communication so far. He's been so welcoming to me. A lot of our communication has just been about reestablishing that relationship. Obviously, I was in Milwaukee for only a year, so now it's kind of building on that respect that we had for each other for the last 7 years and kind of just talking about this opportunity to come back to Milwaukee. So Jenkins said the right things. Talked about their great relationship. Talked about the communication with each other. Talked about how they want to build with one another in Milwaukee. Then you have Haslam. Well, we'll have it figured out by the NBA draft. So that's really my thoughts for this week. Appreciate you all tuning in to Talking Sports with Evan. Appreciate each and every one of you. Appreciate the follow on YouTube. I'm glad you subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you for giving me a follow, and I appreciate that. So with that said, we will be back next week with another episode or two of Talking Sports with Evan, recapping the weekend, updating on what's going on in the wide world of sports, and go from there. So thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Talking Sports with Evan. Thank you so much, and I will get back at you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody, and be safe.